Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for our session, Tracking the Course of Open Access Book Programs in Uncertain Times. I'm Maureen Walsh, Scholarly Sharing Strategist for the Ohio State University Libraries. I am joined by Miranda Bennett, Director of Shared Collections, California Digital Library, Kathy Carlisle Fountain, Head of Business Development, Oxford University Press, and Charles Watkinson, Director, University of Michigan Press. Many libraries and publishers are eager to develop and support business models that will enable the open access publishing of monographs, allowing scholarship and book-focused disciplines, especially in the humanities, to enjoy the reach and impact achieved by open access articles and journals. In a time of tightening budgets and increasing uncertainty for higher education, publishers and librarians must balance their shared interest in making vital scholarship freely available with their respective needs for sufficient revenue and manageable costs. In response to the current moment, our panel of librarians and publishers will share their perspectives on strategic priorities for open access books, emerging approaches to funding open access book publication, and aligning business practices and decision-making with core values in an environment of unpredictable change. This session will begin with a brief context setting from each speaker and features a dialogue between myself and our panelists. The QR code is to the Code of Conduct, a reminder the Charleston Library Conference is an inclusive conference. And a reminder to use a microphone and to identify yourselves by name and affiliation when asking questions. Miranda? I think you might need to turn that on.
All right, I think it's on. All right, hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's session. So a little bit about the context at California Digital Library, part of the University of California's 10-campus system. Very pleased to see some of my UC colleagues in the audience today. In terms of what we're doing at CDL and University of California in promoting and supporting open access books programs, we do support at the system level several OA books programs. Many of these will be known to you. Some of you are very familiar with them, of course, including MIT Press Direct to Open, University of Michigan Fund to Mission, Scope 3, and Opening the Future. So these are models that are getting to be fairly well established, have kind of some brand recognition within our community. We're also in the midst of 3 pilot projects with university presses to support specifically the opening of UC-authored monographs, both new and previously published. So that's something that we're trying out and hope, well, we're already learning a lot and hope to learn more. And we also have sponsored a number of UC-authored books within the Big Ten Open Books subject collections. So those are some of the ways that we're engaged with open access books at CDL and University of California.
Tome Toward an Open Monograph Ecosystem launched in 2017 as a 5-year pilot project of participating funding institutions and university presses publishing open access humanities and humanistic social sciences monographs. Following Ohio State's successful local Tome pilot, funded solely by university libraries, we launched a new 3-year initiative to provide open access subvention funding for Ohio State faculty-authored monographs published with university presses. OA funding models for monographs have proliferated since 2017. While Tome and our new monograph initiative are based on BPCs, or book publishing charges, our collective investments prioritize funding models that do not rely on author-side payments. Our support of open access monograph publishing has extended beyond providing direct funding for our own authors to a portfolio of programs that advance access to open monograph publishing for authors regardless of their institutional affiliation, and includes open scholarly infrastructure that underpins open monograph programs. Charles?
So when University of Michigan Press responded to the COVID-19 remote work mandates and removed access restrictions on our ebook collection in spring 2020, use of our monographs ballooned. So Fund to Mission was created to make free access permanent. Our perspective is that libraries cannot be the only source of money to convert book publishing to open access. Other beneficiaries need to contribute. Fund to Mission is distinctive because it relies on 4 funding streams. So number 1 on this slide is support from the University of Michigan's Provost's Office. So they support book publishing as humanities infrastructure. The second is collection purchases from around 250 libraries, and these libraries benefit from unique access to over 2,000 restricted access books in the University of Michigan Press ebook collection. The third is contributions by authors, parent institutions, but only when possible. So those institutions want their faculty books to be open access to increase their faculty's impact. We always ask, we never require that funding. And the fourth is continued sales of print books, and I see this as a convenience fee for individuals who choose a non-electronic mode of reading. The program at this point is almost sustainable. It currently makes it possible for the press to publish 75% of its scholarly books immediately open access every year.
Kathy?
So Oxford has been involved in open access ebooks largely from an author side funding model for some time. And we produce about 100 titles a year, but we've done a number of other pilots to try to engage different ways of providing open access to content that's not journals. So we've participated in the Scope 3 project and made some physics titles available. We just completed a Commit to Open cycle where we were looking for funding for books to be published open access in disciplines where it's more difficult to find book processing charges available from the institutions themselves or the authors. And then we just successfully were able to open the Max Planck Public International Law Encyclopedias for the year with a subscribe to open model. That's our first subscribe to open model. And there's so many little pilots. And then we've got our CDL pilot, which is we've partnered with CDL to convert 100 backlist monographs to open access, and just announced the winners of a competitive project to fund the first book of authors who are publishing and have their book processing charges covered so that they can publish open access and get access and recognition for their content. So our strategy has been evolving, and we're trying lots of things to see, what resonates in the marketplace and how we can make progress towards our mission of creating more open content.
All of us on this panel are supporting open access book programs as funders or publishers and as stakeholders considering our strategic alignments as we navigate limited and uncertain funding. I'm going to ask a series of questions of our panelists to try and unpack the opportunities and challenges of current and emerging business models for open access books and how we are aligning our support with core organizational values. Since the 5-year author side payment pilot, TOME, launched in 2017, we have seen a number of newer models that eschew author side payment, or BPCs, and instead rely on the collective action of subscribe to open and membership models. Many of these models are joint ventures of participating presses. Others are press specific. I'm wondering from your perspectives, what models or types of models are gaining traction and what may be losing traction? And what factors do you see at play? Charles, as you assess your own program and those that you participate in, and keep an eye on the broader landscape, do you see a through line of success in this space? And if so, what is succeeding and why?
Thank you for that. So as the number of collective action models for books proliferate, I think it's becoming increasingly clear that libraries don't have sufficient money in their existing budgets to bear the cost of a fully open access book publishing ecosystem. Collective action models funded by libraries alone can support some scholarly books becoming open access, and in some smaller publishers, all books. But library funds cannot support the majority of scholarly books becoming OA. Hybrid, not single-payer models are necessary for scale. For example, we may hate book publishing charges, BPCs, but an institution or a research funder that has invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in a faculty member's research should contribute to their publishing costs. And if it's institutional money, the contribution must come from the department or college. It cannot be yet another chip off the library's budget. Departments pay for faculty travel and equipment, so why don't they support publishing costs? Why is it okay for a research funder to pay for OA journal publishing, but assume that the library will be the only one paying for OA book publishing? I want to be clear, not all institutions can or should pay. Free rider is only an appropriate term when an institution can afford to support open access but does not do so. Publishers should never require an author to find money for a BPC. But if we don't ask the Vice Provost for Research, the department head, the Associate Dean for the Humanities at a research-intensive university for money, we let academic departments at wealthy institutions off the hook. And currently, for every institution stepping up to support open access books, there are 10 sitting on their hands. As well as more hybrid models, I'm seeing more frequent requests from libraries for author affiliation data. It is clearly important to demonstrate how authors from one's own institution are benefiting from open access book programs, especially those sponsored by the library. I worry a bit that if this practice goes too far, small publishers will be disadvantaged. Publishers who publish more books, especially edited ones, will clearly have more affiliated authors. A connected theme is that libraries are asking for more granular usage stats. This is a reasonable request. But what sorts of usage stats are most useful is controversial. For example, because open access books do not require authentication, the usage stats traceable to the institutional IP range may underrepresent the impact of OA.
So Maureen asked about the through line, and I would say that at Oxford, it's typically the book processing charge. I mean, we've got essentially an economic model that helps us understand the value of a book, which helps us then understand how we need to price the variety of things we engage with. It doesn't mean it's exclusively that model, but it's a way of basing a cost or an experiment using a book processing charge. Now, that's not entirely the case at all times, and we've done some other experiments, but I think that this, while it's not always popular, I do think that it will continue to resonate a little bit, in part because of some of the things we've already said, that there is like a direct author benefit there, and we can trace it back to the affiliated institution. The libraries can show the value of that funding, and so I think that that's where our through line is. I think that I've heard at this conference, that's where people are showing that they need to show the value of their investments because it'll benefit their authors.
Miranda, from your experience, are there types of open access book programs that are more palatable for library funders than others?
Yeah, thanks, Maureen. That's a great question. So some of the factors that we at CDL, of course, working with our colleagues in the UC campus libraries, would take into account when considering whether or not to support an OA book program include how well the books being open meets standard collection development criteria. These might include relevance to research and teaching, high level of academic quality, things that are already really well ingrained in some of our decision-making processes. We're also looking at what benefits are offered to supporters. These might include access to paywalled backlist titles. That's a model that's out there with some of these programs. And also whether the program is opening or likely to open books authored by people affiliated with the University of California, even if there's not necessarily a direct connection between the financial support provided by the library and the opening of those books. Now, Charles beat me to the punch here, but I will note also, because I never want to miss an opportunity to reinforce my reputation as your friend who can't stop talking about author affiliation metadata, we really appreciate publishers who are able to provide data about UC authored books that are included in their open access book programs.
Thank you. Libraries have been supporting open access book programs in earnest over the past decade. how are libraries navigating open access books funding in their current and future priority setting in these uncertain times? When library funding is cut or cuts are expected, do we close our ranks or go it alone? How do our priorities shift? Do we revisit our open access support rubrics, guidelines, and principles? Are they modified? Do we narrow our focus to opening the books of our institution's authors versus opening anyone's? Or do we double down on supporting the collective? Miranda, from your current perspective on aligning support for open access monographs with core organizational values, do you think it will become more complicated over the next few years? What's your current perspective on aligning that support?
Yeah, thanks, Maureen. I would certainly never claim that anything's going to become less complicated over the next few years. And we're definitely living unquestionably in a difficult moment, particularly for decision making. Budgets are tighter than ever. The only certainty seems to be that nothing is certain. One thing that continues to guide our work at CDL and UC is a strong commitment to making the research produced by UC faculty, staff, and students as broadly available as possible. After significant progress toward opening scholarship that UC authors publish in journals, we are now turning more attention to opening UC-produced scholarship that appears in book form. And we are working with, as I mentioned, a few university presses, Oxford is one of them, to pilot models that support opening UC-authored books specifically. This kind of direct link between money invested and the opening of our authors' work is, I think, probably the most compelling case we can make for supporting open access books. We've also been able to maintain support without significant objection or concern for OA book programs that evolved out of traditional publishing models that UC was already bought into. That is where we were once buying the front list collection from a publisher. Now that investment might go toward a subscribe to open model. We haven't changed our mind about the value of the content, and now our dollars not only ensure that we can provide access to that content for our local community, but also contribute to the greater good by helping a publisher meet a revenue target that enables the opening of those same books to the world.
Thank you. The changes in the higher education space can and do affect the funders and funding that open access monograph publishers rely on. How are open access monograph publishers preparing for and adapting to changes that can feel in a constant state of flux? Are you adjusting how you frame your business models? Are you adjusting your focus, your reporting to funders? Kathy, how are you addressing uncertainty at Oxford?
Sure. At Oxford, our overall approach is to experiment with a variety of models without being wedded to a single one. So you've seen our history of what we've been engaged in, and over time that has evolved pretty significantly with a lot of new experiments. We launched 4 new pilots to grow our OA book publishing in the last year and this year. I mean, that's pretty good for us. I mean, we had one single model for a while. We've seen a lot of change in the last couple of years. And each experiment tells us something new about what resonates, what libraries want, what our infrastructure can bear. And our library funders seem to need to demonstrate local benefit, just like Miranda was talking about. In the case of our partnership with CDL, they were looking to support books, just as Miranda just said, so I won't go belabor that. But I think that that's an area where the authors get to see an actual benefit, and it's a really easy place to explain value. And that, I think, is a way that we can take a chance on an experiment where we know there will be a benefit to us and a benefit to them. We have also experimented with Commit to Open, which sought collaborative funding to publish open access books across 3 collections. It raised only 21% of its required funding. And so we will publish some of those books open, but unfortunately we can't publish all of the books we plan to publish open. And my colleague, Rodri Jackson, who's our open access publisher, published a piece on LinkedIn. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it, talking about our strategy and what we've tried to do and what we've accomplished. And he spoke about our pilot, that it was greeted by a lot of goodwill by librarians, but goodwill only goes so far. So we, had the political environment been significantly better this year, we may have met our funding target and been able to gather more funding in order to publish those titles. But with our first books initiative, I think we're taking a different tack. There's lots of different approaches here. So this one, we had 100 applicants apply for funding, which far exceeded our expectations. 10 authors were awarded the prize of being able to publish their book open access without any charges whatsoever. Those were covered by the press. And it was wildly successful, and it showed a clear need by authors, a desire by authors that we could help support in a way that was different from book processing charges. So we'll continue to test some models and consider approaches and see what resonates with authors, funding bodies, and academic institutions.
Thank you. Charles, at Michigan, how are you addressing the current climate? Are you reframing to emphasize the local to Michigan, the university, and to Michigan, the state? Local as in affiliations matched to funders? How are subject-based collections faring versus affiliation-based support?
Yes, thank you, Maureen. We're recording author affiliations systematically for the first time. And I think in the words of Matilda the musical, sometimes you need to be a little bit selfish, and that's okay. So we as publishers do need to help librarians make the case that they're getting unique benefits for their institution when they invest in open access. For publishers with backlists, that can mean unique access to restricted resources for a supporting library, and it can mean providing custom usage stats for authors associated with the institution that shows local benefits. Your reference to showing impact for the state is interesting. We have recently had more requests from the leadership of the university to demonstrate how our public university benefits residents of Michigan, and our OA book usage now can be geolocated to tell a really good story of use across all the counties of the state. And we also have a questionnaire that shows that readers are encountering and enjoying open access books far beyond the university cities. And I think I'm seeing at this meeting a lot of interest from other states in our ability to show state usage.
Thank you. Miranda, as libraries are making decisions around potential open access book models to support, programs to renew, or programs to cancel or not renew, what role do you see the sources of funding playing, or how do funding structures affect positioning? Open monograph spending is often one-time versus continuations that we see with journals. And open access monograph programs may be supported with discretionary funds versus the collections budget. For example, at Ohio State, university libraries funded tome in our post-tome program with discretionary funds or one-time funds.
Yeah, thanks, Maureen. What an interesting set of questions. So as I mentioned earlier, in cases where a publisher's open access monograph program has evolved out of a well-established book purchasing model, such as buying perpetual access to an annual ebook front list, we've found it relatively simple to transition to supporting the OA program, especially if, as Charles was saying, it offers benefits not available without participation, such as guaranteed access to content, even if an annual revenue target isn't reached. It's more challenging to secure funding to support or participate in an OA books program without a pre-existing budget item whose funding can be sort of repurposed for open access. I think a lot of libraries are very reluctant to cannibalize or continue cannibalizing, since this part of collections budget has been rated for years, money dedicated to title-by-title book purchasing, approval plans, or other conventional models to invest in new business models supporting OA book publication. In my view, business models for opening books that are premised on one-time funding from libraries, these do have significant potential. So you've heard about the pilot that we're working on with OUP, which is to set up a program to open a significant number of backlist books by UC authors. And if a program like this became a standard offering, libraries could adjust the size of their investment to the funds available in a given year, while making a high-value investment in openness focused on affiliated authors, or another criterion that's meaningful to their community. We've learned that these kind of backlist opening programs can present challenges apart from funding, such as rights clearance issues. But I will say the initial response from UC authors who have been given the opportunity to open a previously published book has been very positive overall.
Thank you. To wrap up our panel, a future-looking question. In response to the current moment, from your perspective, what one priority for the sustainability of open access monograph programs do you want to share? Kathy?
I'm going to meander just a minute, but it is difficult to limit comments to one single strategic priority. There are so many important considerations for sustainability in this space. And as many of you know, the economics of monographic publishing are particularly challenging. A few successful monographs can help underwrite the costs of the important but less successful monographs, and we have to strike a balance in that. I've mentioned several times we are doing some experiments to see what we can do in this space, and that supporting open access is part of our mission, and we're looking to find the right ways to do that while also maintaining the right amount of revenue to ensure that our 500-year-old press is around for another 500 years. And these experiments can take a lot of time to prepare and execute, and on the back end of the press, the part you never see, it involves a wide consultation across lots of departments and lots of coordinated efforts. It can pull people away from those established and efficient workflows to try something new with a wobbly workflow, high startup costs, or uncertain appeal. So it's really, there's a lot of startup costs there, right? And given all of that, I'd say that the strong partnerships with libraries and consortia are the most important strategic priority for us to get this right. They help us understand what kind of model is desired. We get to test out resources against their expectations and identify gaps. We practice with workflows that can be improved and think about how the project can scale in other kinds of libraries or around the globe. Our editorial team and our sales team jumped at the chance to work with CDL on a pilot because we knew they'd be great partners from several years of working together on other projects. And we knew they'd push us to test potential for a new business model, which we needed. And we knew they wanted to invest. And that's actually a pretty key piece there, is that there has to be money to fund something that is an experiment and is a challenge so that it can be successful and that we can adapt and learn. So these kind of partnerships are real win-wins for us in the industry, and improves access to scholarship for all of us.
Charles?
I love wobbly workflow, by the way. I would like to see more payers from outside the library contribute to costs. The president of the University of Michigan has asked all faculty members recently to be public intellectuals to address national distrust in academia. OA books are demonstrably bridging the divide between higher ed and the public. Many institutional participants in the Tome Initiative shared the costs of participating 2 or even 3 ways: the library, the Dean of the Humanities, the Vice President for Research, for example. Parts of the university that support faculty promotion and reputation building arguably benefit most from authors getting the OA book advantage, more than the library even, and they should contribute their part, even if that is just $5,000 per book.
Miranda?
Yeah, thanks. I also like the wobbly workflow. That's a good turn of phrase. So I think an important strategic priority might actually be something that's reflected in the makeup of this panel. And this is the opportunity for libraries and consortia to work with university presses to experiment with different kinds of funding models, with an eye toward developing approaches that can be adopted or adapted by other libraries and other publishers. So as we've launched our pilot projects, one thing that has kept me motivated is recognizing that even if the model we're piloting doesn't ultimately prove successful, we will learn things that we can apply to the next iteration of business model experimentation, and we will have opened quite a few books. Since scholarly books tend to sustain their value over many years, making even a relatively small number of them permanently open access, whether this happens at the time of publication or later, has the potential to have a significant impact over the long term. So if we work together to try new things, not only may we come up with approaches that enable the ongoing opening of scholarly books, but will also create the immediate and future benefit that comes from opening the books along the way.
Thank you, Miranda, Charles, and Kathy. We'll now open it up for questions from the audience.